Welcome, everyone, to our planning and zoning work meeting. We are starting at 5:31 p.m. this lovely brisk January 22nd. And I have just two announcements reminding everyone that we have a training tomorrow. Everybody can make it. Or have to do an alternate training of some sort. And also next week from tomorrow is the Dark Sky Summit in St. George. And I'm hoping to make it depends on how my husband does. So otherwise, okay. All right. Is anybody else planning to go to the Dark Sky Summit for your team? Is anybody else planning to go to Dark Sky Summit? I probably can.
What time is the Dark Sky Summit?
It starts for like lunch, 12:30.
Yeah, I'm doing it. I'll be at training
No.
tomorrow.
No. On the 30th, a week from now.
Yes,
So
I'm
we just
there.
have to, you just have to make people,
I'm registered.
you are?
Yes. Yeah.
Good. I've got my fingers and toes crossed, maybe bringing my. So. Does anybody else, oh, and I gotta plug again tomorrow, we have Virgin resident, Gerhard Leonard will be in this room, 6 to 7:30, giving an author's talk on his writing journey, and he will have some of his publications. His what? Books for sale. Oh, okay. All right. Does anybody else have any announcements that they would like to make at this time?
I would like to announce that I can't seem to connect to the. It says I'm connected, but there's no. Internet. There isn't. I haven't been mine. It's connected to Town Virgin, no internet.
Are you connecting to the wrong?
You must be connected to the wrong one.
Yeah,
What Virgin? Yes.
Virgin, yeah.
yeah, do that one.
Oh, okay.
And mine goes back to, it's not about
Jeremy, what's the name of the author for tomorrow?
Gerhard, Gerhart. Yeah,
Password.
We'll get it for you.
password for Virgin guests.
I'll get it for you.
All right, so our first order of business, while we're getting everything on morning, is Mr. Kevin Smedley. Welcome back.
Thank you. Hope you all had a great holiday season. I did, so. Okay. Previously I sent out the survey summary, which is a 69 page document or 67 page document.
66.
Something I don't, and then I also sent the introduction, just the initial write-up on the introduction, the land use and the housing elements. What's your pleasure? What do you want to address first?
My gut is to say the summary, because that will inform any changes to the other items. Anybody else have a thought on that?
I agree. I think that lots might change in the framework of the plan once we digest the survey.
Right, okay.
And those documents are in SharePoint. For this meeting.
Would anyone like a paper copy of the summary?
Sure. Mention mine.
Do you want to do?
Take one. Sean, just in the matter of the vote, do you have?
Appreciate it.
Do we have anyone online? No.
No.
Okay, and this is, it's still being refined. I found a couple things I've been taking out that were just kind of not constructive comments that were attacking. And I don't think those are appropriate.
No.
They attack the person that keep everybody. But it's one here that feel like they need to take out. So we'll get that out and then. Okay, just initially, the third paragraph, fourth paragraph on the first page. Kind of gives you an idea of who's represented. 45 and older represent 77% of those that took the survey. So, you have good representation from that age group. Also from the below, from 18 to 44, it's actually very representative of what the community is made of. 20%, almost 23%, who conducted or took the survey, and they represent about 21%. So that was really close. Whereas the other one, they represent 47% of the town's population. So, and the other remaining who were not included in the survey were the 32% who are under 18. Something that I found interesting was that more than half, 55.3%, have lived here less than 10 years.
Yes.
So a lot of people are interested. That being said, 20 those who have been here 20 years or more made up 15% of the respondents. And two-person households by far represented those, almost 75% of those who were in the two-person household. So that's just kind of gives you an idea of the people that participated. So what I'd like to do is that each of the, I'm going to read any of the comments that people wrote. They're all recorded here. I just want to kind of go through the questions with the graphs, and I'll let you have the time to go through this document and read the comments that were made regarding things. And you'll find that there's a wide variety of opinions on some topics, and then there's a lot of agreement on other topics. So that might give you some direction. And also, as you look through the graphs, and I'll try and point a couple of those out, there was a spectrum of, don't want it at all, maybe a little bit, no opinion. And if you look at the two ends of the spectrum, you'll see that maybe even though there's quite a number who didn't want something or who did want something, on the other end of the spectrum, when you look at the two bookends, or not the two bookends, then you might see that there's a lot that really do agree with something or really don't agree with something. And, so keep that in mind as you go through. I didn't have time to go through and do a median number on all these, which I normally do. And some of them didn't lend themselves to median number because you could take multiple responses. Okay, so that being said, nearly 60% of people thought that the current vision statement, if you look at page 2, is they agree with they could also answer and add comments, and so some of those comments may be below. There was 39, which is around 40%, just under 40% that didn't like it. They didn't, or they didn't like a portion of it. And so those comments are down below. So generally, that being said, it's generally in the direction that it's staying that's the same way. So if you turn to page 4, the next graph is what is your vision for the town of Virgin in the next 10 to 20 years? You'll see that by far the majority would like to see us stay a small residential town, and then there is some interest in growth of the commercial. As you look through the comments, you notice there's a number of people that realize that the commerce is important for providing funds to keep the community operating. So then on to traffic and circulation on page 5. Let's go through that very briefly. First question was how important it is to have a safe pedestrian crossing on SR9. I mean, you can see this is one of those where if you look at the not important at all, slightly important, moderately important, very important, extremely important. If you look at those all together, it looks pretty evenly divided. But if you take into consideration however you want to look at it personally, slightly important means that some people thought it could be important. So if you look at that, you could say, well, those last four are very key. And as you read through the comments, some of the comments were simply people that they're of an age that they would never do it. They would never go out and cross.
That was a large portion of people who, that age group.
That's right, but not at all. And then the next question, number 4, there's a graph there, but you asked about the development of a multi-use trail, and there's almost 2 pages, well, there's more than 2 pages of response to that. So that goes clear over till the end of the page or the top of page 9. Question 5 was how important for you to have a pedestrian trail around and through town, and you can see that it's pretty evenly divided. There is interest, and then let's tip over to the next question or the next 2. So which pedestrian bike path would you use more? Page 10. The majority would like a buffered from the highway or an off-road path. You can see that that's quite evenly divided. So people just don't want to be on the highway, and they're comfortable if it's buffered along the highway, but some people would probably not use it there.
Can you repeat that? Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
So it's pretty evenly divided. So the question was getting at, are you okay with the trail being along the highway if it's buffered? Which in most cases would mean that it's probably not part of the travel pavement. It would be a separated trail, but it would be within the easement of the highway, as opposed to a trail that meanders through town away from the highway. So, and some people are very comfortable with being where there's traffic, and a lot of people are not. But it's, how often, and then people have an interest in using the path if you look at this graph. So there's some that will never, 17 out of those that responded to this question, but some of them use it at least every now and then. Some of the comments you can see possibly a few times a day. So there's interest among people in using alternative forms of transportation. The next question on page 12, what would you consider to encourage you to use bike or walk more? And you can see that either better bike travel lanes, safer crossing. The biggest one was more sidewalks and paths. We're going to get to a couple other questions that would lead me to believe that they were thinking paths rather than sidewalks.
Yes.
Okay, and then you can see the others. The question was asked about an alternative route out of town, and you can see that it's not at all important to some people. A lot of people recognize that there are alternate routes. They're not paved. You can use the Sheep Ridge Road if you had to go over.
This one surprised me.
This what?
This one surprised me.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
So the question is, how important is it to have an alternate route or routes into and out of the town of Virgin? Into and out of the town of Virgin.
Yeah. So basically something other than Highway 9. And it's very likely Sheepridge Road will be improved sooner than later. With the changes in the rules with the tunnel design and the need to bring more vehicles around. And so I think that's the NPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization that does planning for the highways. They're looking at that, anything that's been moved up in their priorities.
Sure. What are they changing about the rules in the tunnel?
They're not allowed buses.
They're not gonna allow buses or RVs,
Large RVs.
they won't close the tunnel, they will,
Oh,
they're gonna keep traffic moving in both directions. All right, how satisfied you with the conditions of the road? Generally, people are either, you know, you can see. People realize, from my impression of, is that, you know, they're happy with the condition they are generally. It takes tax dollars to keep them in pristine condition. And there's a regular schedule for updating the roads. And taking care of them. And then we get into a couple of questions about sidewalks. How important it is for you to have sidewalks in town. And you can see that not all important is, you know, the biggest one. And then there's some that where it's moderately important, but then if you turn the page to how important it is for you to have them in your neighborhood, you can see that not at all is the big winner there. So that's why, going back to that other question on bicycle paths versus sidewalks, led me to believe that there were a lot of paths.
Well, I think that if you look back at the question about a path or a sidewalk or bike lane along SR9, it seems to me that a lot of that will be taken up into that, so people like the idea of having a sidewalk or a walking path along SR9,
Right,
not necessarily inside their community,
right.
sort of appears, yes.
All right, and then the transit, which is happening now, that there's a few that will use it regularly, and then some regionally and some will regularly.
Kevin, do you know if
Yes.
there's any data on ridership?
I don't know if it's been operating long enough for them to publish any data, they're collecting it, but I know that initially there was pretty good ridership. But I don't know if that's.
You trying to peer into the buses and say that's
You can't say anything.
Figure that out.
Right,
I've never seen anything on Fairfield.
so if you look at the table for question 14, please label the top 3 most pressing transportation needs. Traffic calming definitely was the biggest one, the one out is most pressing.
Well,
If you look at, so 48 responses prioritize traffic calming as the #1 priority. Top of the column is the priority level. Number 2 was bicycle and pedestrian access and safety. And number 3 was also bicycle, pedestrian access and safety. So those that responded, that's seems to be the priority. That being said, there are other priorities you can see on improving the condition of the roadways.
Which kind of is opposite of the previous one.
Right. So, yeah, you can see, you can take that into consideration. And then we get into the economic development questions. And you can see that it's pretty evenly split about the impact of tourism. A lot of people view it negatively, but a lot of people view it positively. And yeah, it's very,
Until you count up the comments.
yeah. Well, and some people, and the thing that you need to keep in mind with the comments is that a lot of people just mark it and move on. Not everyone comments on
Yeah.
the question. So if they have a strong opinion, they're going to comment.
And there's really not very many comments on this one. There's only.
Yeah, there's
1,
just a
2,
few.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And then the list of the impacts, you can read through that over the next few pages. Turning to page 22. About encouraging the support of new business. Strongly agree, somewhat agree, and then it diminishes words. Strongly disagree. So there's support for growth. And then
Strong support.
and you can see that there's a number, a lot of the comments came in as people would like a post office back here, right? So, but realizing that there's other things that add to quality of life, either from the revenue generated or from the services available. And then you can see the types of use that people would like to see happen as it grows. And industrial and lodging are definitely not
Yeah.
in the way. So, and just to keep in mind, is I noticed that as I went through this, that people that would mark other things other than residential on every form. I think they viewed residential as just a given, and they didn't mark residential. So even though it's the top number, 73 doesn't necessarily reflect how many people value the residential, right? So,
Excuse me, on this question. This question was a multiple, like you could pick multiple items, correct? And what was the total number of respondents?
the total number of respondents, I didn't have
Maybe
time to
it's like
tabulate
113.
that, but pardon,
I think it's about 113.
the total number
On this.
that took the survey was 113. But the total number that responded to this question, I was not able to. I'll have to get that number for you. I just didn't have time to tabulate it, but I can get that for you. And you can see there's a lot of responses to what area of town you would like to see commercial use in. Different parts of town, a lot of emphasis, of course, on the highway, but some on different parts of it. And then the types of businesses, you can see there's a lot of variety of things that people would like to see. Environmental questions, this one was the slam dunk, there was no controversy here. It was just people do view the environment is important. And you can see on page 30, the different things, the different levels of responses, the numbers of things that they viewed were important. Outdoor recreation kind of trailed among some, and but the rest were all there in the 80s. The one question that there was less agreement on the particular area was the managing stormwater. You can see that that's pretty evenly split between strongly agree and somewhat agree, whereas the rest of them are pretty much strongly agree. So I think people may view that as putting requirements on them to improve the drainage on their current properties, or I don't know why they responded that way. But that was kind of what I assumed. As you go through the rest of these, the dark sky, people strongly agree. The viewscapes, very strongly agree. Water conservation, strongly agree. And then the Dust Bowl was also one where the numbers trailed off. There was some people that just didn't have a concern about it. There was more there that didn't have a concern about it compared to the others. But it still was
Still
on
pretty
a
strong.
high level of concern.
Missing my hearing, but still care about it.
Right. And there, I haven't reviewed all your ordinances, but my guess is that there's already a noise ordinance that limits.
We have
sound
adopted the county noise ordinance, is that correct?
The decimal. for the.
That's what
noise
we're told.
ordinance.
We're
They operate in the county.
working on
We're
noise.
working on it.
Well, we have a county noise ordinance that is adopted by the county.
Yeah, but we're working on, and
On our
that's one of the
own
things. that
noise
we're working
ordinance,
on.
that's correct, yeah.
All right, and then, the people support purchasing the farmland there. So then,
That's surprising. I found that surprising.
I did too.
under the housing survey, questions. People are aware that there is not really available housing. You know, readily available to purchase. Or for rent. So that's on page 36, 37. These are the types of housing that people would support, and it was interesting to me that there's a fairly high number that support, you know, duplexes compared to triplexes or apartments. And also the clustered cottage style, which is something that's not here, but is a great idea.
Shared open space.
Yeah. All right, the law comes to go along with that. And then there are people, by and large, question 32, because they did not. They're not really thrilled about greater density. A lot of them were just the no, and so you can see those. There are some that agreed, obviously, and then would like to see more compact development centered rather than sprawling development. Then the question was asked about staying in Virgin through now and through retirement. If you want your children to be able to stay and live in Virgin, and should there be long-term housing for rent in Virgin? And you can see that those staying here by far, you know, outweighed everything else, but there was still interest in people having their children here, was much lower, but even higher than that was the long-term rentals. So that's an encouraging thing, because some people just can't afford to buy. But
Question, sir.
yes,
On this question, the way the answers, the one we're just going wrong.
33.
When you got the 39 respondents to I want my children to be able to stay in the Virgin. You think that number is kind of representative? Is that going to be primarily in the under 45 or under 44 group, or
Probably, yeah.
can you break that out in by demographic for us or no?
I'll have to look and see how complicated that would be, because
Could be
the
adults.
date is not, I'll have to go through and count. But I'll see what I can do. But by and large, people that are older, that their children are married and established, they know that their children probably won't move back here to Sunday. So that would be my guess there. The mixed use development got, you know, the difference between the no opinion and in the middle, the numbers not, you know, add up. There's strong opposition, but the numbers of those that oppose are about equal to those that are in favor or in favor. So partly, and a lot of the comments you'll see there are, is I would like to see what they're proposing before I get on answers, right?
That's probably the no opinion. You think?
Yeah. And then the next one, how do you feel about short-term rentals? This one, the people could select multiple. That's the way the question was set up. I'm not in Qualtrics, I think it was that way. And so the numbers don't necessarily reflect how people would look. Most people, there's some that supported it, some that simply marked limited number, some that marked both support and limited in number. You know, there's a variety of ways people marked it.
Question,
Yes,
do we know how many short-term rentals there are in town?
Yeah.
Approx.
Legal or illegal?
Oh, close.
Short-term rentals,
Yeah.
Yes,
not including residential hosting, correct?
not including what?
Residential hosting,
Correct.
so legal short-term rentals, we have three.
Three. Gosh. Three per.
Like Airbnbs.
Three.
So, but that's,
Did you say
Three,
three? Okay, and do you know of illegal short-term rentals?
yeah, we have like 20.
Okay,
There is some legislation being proposed this session that would allow the towns to actually do the things that they've been prevented from doing in the past.
Actually, sorry, let me just give them an update on that. I actually just got an update with our code enforcement officer, and I think it's even dwindled down because he had mailed out letters to have them remove their listings. This has been a little while ago, and his list has went from this to this, and now he's getting ready to mail out secondary warning letters to the smaller list that say you did not remove your letters, or you did not remove your listing, you're gonna be penalized. So it's dwindling, so I think we're down to smaller amounts,
also.
and or they're gonna have to come to the office and get complaint.
But also, a lot of the, residential hostings are listed under these platforms.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
think the numbers
Well,
are.
And we have residential hosting ones, now that's a different story, we have like 22 residential hosting licenses that are legal. In Virgin,
And when you talk about illegal ones, are they,
running and operating without a license.
okay, but they may still be paying tax?
They're all paying tax, if
They
they're
are.
running through one of the.
Yeah,
if
they
they're
have to be
running
paying
through
tax
services.
without it, yeah.
Is that the law that's gonna change?
The law that's proposed to change would allow communities to monitor and utilize the data from the rental websites.
It'll just be making.
Right now,
process.
they can't do it.
This one's shocking, this one's surprising to me. This is quite, like. I didn't think that I would see this question be. More supported than opposed. So this question was a little shocking to me.
That's where the comments,
Well,
are.
no, because all, the comments are all represented in the data as well. Right?
But if you read the comments, they're not against them, they're just, they feel like they're saturated on short-term rentals. I also think they might also be thinking of, which is on Airbnb or VRBO, some of our glamping. So.
Yeah, those are not included in the glamping stuff that, cause,
But it may be on VRBO.
yeah, but those ones, so like. The
Correct.
letters that he has mailed out and stuff are not,
Yeah, I understand
Included on
that, but if somebody goes on to Airbnb or VRBO, they're gonna see some of our glamping.
yeah, they
So
do
then
those
that
those on
may-
there,
And
yeah.
they'll look at a list and they'll say, oh, there's 300, there's 100.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Half
so
of them
so
are
we
in-
currently are using a program called Granicus. That the county actually purchased for everybody to use to bring compliant. Illegal Airbnbs that tracks. People's postings on not just Airbnb or VRBO, but anywhere on the web that they post
Yeah.
their listing.
But on this one, when I read the comments, it really gave me more context. It's kind of like, we're not totally against it, we just don't want to be, we want balance.
I wonder if the question had asked about approving more short-term rentals, if the answers might have been different, because I think some of the people are saying, yeah, they're okay, but we have too many, you know.
Well,
And part of it is also education in that, you know, short-term rentals compete for long-term housing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
you know what is interesting though? And I don't know, this would be a lot different for Virgin because we're a lot smaller market, but. I just read an article coming out of, New York, and I can't remember what. But New York shut down the vacation rental in markets in New York City.
City.
And they shut down 80%. 80% of the short-term rentals in New York were shut down last year, and closed permanently. And they saw no significant decrease in rental prices. Long-term rental prices.
Cause once they
Right, and-
inflate, they don't go back down.
And
Yeah.
it's hard to compare New York.
Yeah, like I said, it's a way different market.
Right, and I have a son and daughter-in-law who live there, and so many of the rents are rent control and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And apartments are scarce there, so they're hard to find for people that want to live right in. You know,
I had a daughter in the city, yeah, it was tough.
all right, let's go on to page 46. You got public services questions. About the parks, the playgrounds, the ball fields. People are generally satisfied and, you know. There was a few comments about them, but other than that, it's. Then the follow-up question was what improvements, if any, would you want add to these sites? And generally they were supportive. Pickleball was mentioned a few times and a few things like that. But generally people are, you know, maintenance and, yeah, we like what's there. Going over to page 48, should the amount of, code enforcement be more or less or the same? The majority would like to see more, some would like to see less, and about a third would like to see about the same. So, and then there's a number of comments, I mean, they're not that many, but a few. So if you go to the table on page 49, how is it important to you to enhance property standards? And this was talking about code enforcement issues. And you can see they were rated 1 through 5 as a priority. There, a lot of people, just on this one, so you know, a lot of people marked 1 on every one, or they marked, 5 on every one, or they, so that being said, the numbers here, I don't know if they're really, you're getting a real feel for the 1 through 5 priorities. So.
They do reflect what people tell me.
So, and you can see the number 1 priority is weeds and trash. The second one would be abandoned vehicles and junk cars. Third is unattended cats and dogs.
Which is also the most popular one for 5th place.
Right. And then on the number 4 is the street parking for large commercial construction vehicles. And then number 5, there was already a priority on most of them, so I didn't even, you can see that the top priority there is again cats and dogs. But you know, there's not a real clear number 5 based on how people. What is it? You can see that there's a lot of comments related to that bottom of that page. And then the questions on the next 2 pages were next few pages were, what would you like to see in the new city building? That's starting on page 50. There's a lot of different comments there about things that people would like to see. And this, for this building, the next question that's the bottom of page 51, going through another page and a half. And then what would you like to see with the empty lots? And there are suggestions for public facilities, but it was interesting to me that there was a number that suggested just a community garden or something that would be just, open space that could be used.
Some people are really confused about how much space is there too.
And my guess is if you live next
Yeah.
to, you know,
Or
a
less.
fire station there.
Or less.
All right, and then the last, few pages are just the summary questions
This
of
one right here,
the
community
demographic.
garden next to a fire station that also has a yoga studio. Pilates, and infrared sauna, etc.
There you go.
It's a little tongue in cheek there.
I think.
Sorry, Kevin.
No, that's good. So on page 55, the next few pages are just the background, which I kind of summarized very document. And then, if you turn to page 58, there's the table representing people's responses and why they chose to live here. And then below that are the graphs for each one of those. I won't take the time to go through them, but you can look through, what people thought was important about living here and where the priorities were.
It's interesting that 35 people were undecided as to whether they were born here.
Yeah, and the question was worded in such a way, and I didn't have space to put that undecided for, I don't know, not applicable, so. And then you can see at the bottom of page 63, how long you plan to stay in Virgin. There's a variety of answers there. A lot of people want to be here a long time, so unless they feel regulated out of town, this is kind of the gist of that. And then on page 66, there were several notes that were attached, and I just summarized those there because they weren't connected in specific question. So you can see that there's a lot to look through and take into consideration.
Then my first read. Very interesting.
Okay. So now I'd just like to briefly, have you, any of you had a chance to look at the intro
I think.
and any of these documents?
Others. Yeah.
No? Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna quickly hand these out. And I don't want to go through and read them. But I would like to see if I'm heading in the right direction as far as the language. And simply going through and editing the current document. If you think that it should be, if you think it should be,
That's it for Larry.
okay. Probably late because of, it was just a written response.
Yeah, it's hard to, because, I mean, forever could mean a lot of different things.
Right.
If you're one of the over 75, forever might not be very long. Like my down. Right, but that's way different than like a 25-year-old that said
Yeah.
forever. That's kind of a big difference.
So for these, you can see I've gone through and redlined some things, the current conditions have been updated or added in the case of the land use element, there actually wasn't a current condition there. So, current conditions, I mean, oh, I did it, I added an intro to that. And I changed the wording, so I don't know if you're happy with that, but it's certainly up for discussion. You can see, let's just use the land use element as an example. So under desired, I changed that, I didn't know, areas to focus, because this is to lay out what you want to be focusing on and working on in the next period of time. I did not edit anything below that other than just grammar. So I'm not editing the content on any of these sections below the introduction until you've had a chance to look at these documents, and then we'll go through and just edit them, get your input on those. You can see that the integration, I've suggested changing the goals and policies. And then because they were goals. And then under each of the goals, you can see their policy related to that. And like I said, the wording on that is just simply making it, editing the grammar and that sort of thing. So is this, am I heading in the right direction?
I still feel like we need to figure out what the survey is telling us, and maybe, for one thing, I feel like moving the main focus away from tourism seems to be something that lots and lots of people want us to do. So, well, I don't know how we would do that exactly, but.
Right, and the focus, you know, and we can do that, is we address the policies, go through them, looking at each of the policies. As we go through, we'll go through and with a discussion with everyone, go through the policies and see where we need to make some adjustments. And I'll get it back to you with those adjustments, see if we're going in this right direction, so. And if you, as you go through these, you can see the areas of focus. There may, like, under the land use example, private property protection was listed in there as the #1 thing. And that, in this survey and previous surveys, that didn't come out as a really high priority. So there may be some things where we're just gonna say, we don't even need to mention that because that's just a given, that's, people do have property rights, right?
What was this then? When you look at page in the survey. And maybe I just need to understand better how these ones work. In your survey, choose to live here, property rights, that actually does. That does come out as very high.
It didn't come out as high as other things, though.
Okay.
So if you look, just, so I was actually surprised, I mean, it came out as high, but you can see on most things, if you're, let me go back to those pages.
But if you added up the top three, if you added up from somewhat important to very important. You are running right in line, maybe a few points behind much of the other stuff,
Right,
So
but not a lot.
I think how you read that is. When you look, starting on page 59, choose to live here, if you look at that very important. Or in here is very important for 7. Whereas chose to live here because of the clean environment. Was 62, chose to live here. Because of family, 31. So that's how you read this.
well, these graphs are not all on the same scale. So if you look at these, Excel just pumped out the graphs, so.
No, I'm getting,
You know what I'm
what I'm doing is I'm adding up the number, I'm
Right. And
I'm just looking at my
saying-
head quickly. I'm
Right,
adding up the top 3 numbers, because that's who say it's at least somewhat important.
right,
So if I add up the top 3 numbers on that graph and compare it to the top 3 numbers on the other graphs, I'm not more than 10 to 15 points lower than any of the other ones.
right. But very important means between somewhat important, because that's, you know. All I'm saying is that those numbers, so if you look at the one above or below,
Mhm.
the very important is half of the number of those above or below.
What page are you looking at?
I'm looking on page 16.
I think it matters.
But when you look at the not important at all, so if you look at the not important at all, you see that number? That's tracking almost the same for all of those, well, on this page.
Right,
So
and I see what you're saying.
I'm just saying that people may not be prioritizing. Property rights as their highest and the biggest factor that got them to move here, but they're still prioritizing that as a factor.
Oh, yes, for sure,
Or as an important factor.
right. But in the current plan, it's listed as the #1
No.
focus.
So Kevin, refresh my brain, when these were presented in the survey. Was this were all of these presented together? And then it was a list. and-
Right, it was that table, if you go back to page
Yeah. The very last.
58, it was that table.
Oh, right here.
So that's the number summary, and then I just did a graph for each response below that, so.
Can I ask, when you post something on the internet, on SharePoint, and then we need to make comments, do you then go back to that, or are you?
He does not have access to SharePoint, you
So
need to
once
email it.
everyone's commented, I can download it and send it back.
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't have access to SharePoint, so he doesn't see what you guys put comments and such
but
on.
that's a great way to get your responses. And then we can go over them.
And the cool thing is, when you respond, your name automatically comes up, so we don't have to worry about color.
Yeah.
Yay, one less thing to worry about.
And so for the next meeting, I will be getting out some updates of just the introduction or the other elements that are written in there.
And by then, we should have a understanding.
And we can all make comments by then on.
Right, right. And I will get those up to Crystal, hopefully a week or two before the next meeting.
Our next meeting in February will be on the 19th.
Okay.
So.
I sent you over
and
that
if we-
calendar, right, of the meetings?
Yeah, and I think I got an older one because that, so if you could send me another.
I'll send you over the new one right now.
Yeah,
And not, if you can, you can. If I could get those, so we have at least a week
oh, yeah, yeah,
to look at them, because I know several of these volunteers, basically, they have full-time jobs,
right. Yeah,
so,
I will.
and I want to.
It may not be every month, but I'll get a few
Yeah.
more at least.
What is our timeline, or what do you think a good timeline is? And I'd also like your suggestions on how do we get this information out to the public?
So
We will need to have another open house, I know.
we need to have a public meeting where they can review it. And it also needs to be reviewed by the town council, so, we don't want to get very far down the road before we get to the town council. So that we know everyone's on the same page, because they can make changes at the end that would, it's up to them.
Which-
So my suggestion is that we get it to them for review so that there's not a lot of changes at the end.
I am concerned about, getting started on the future land use now.
Okay,
And I mean, I think an open house for that would be a very good way to get some. I mean, I know there's a lot here about where should what be, but I think it might be more useful in some ways to actually have maps for people to look at and mark up and all of that. What do you think about that?
that's great. That being said, there's a caveat in there. Is that if there's zoning on property. And for example, if something's zoned commercially already, and you're proposing to change it to something different. That could be viewed as a taking. So
Just viewed as a,
taking that would be suable, that they could sue and.
I'm imagining we have our zoning map, a great big version of our zoning map, and that we could have marked which pieces are actually operating as whatever the zone is that allows, and I'm not suggesting that we're going to be downzoning things.
Well,
I'm just
and
saying that-
that's a challenge every community has, because years ago, they basically, any community that was along the highway, they planned highway commercial. And so, even though they're sitting vacant today, they do have that entitlement, that zone.
Right.
And so that's all I'm saying, that needs to be taken into consideration.
Right,
And if the landowner was like, I don't want to be commercial, that's awesome, if you want to change it. But, yeah, for sure we can do that.
So,
I have a question on that. Cause it's probably, it's a decent idea to have people indicate where they would like certain things on a map. If we were to put out though maps that show different zones potentially for properties, would those, and this is a legal question, would those people that we're saying, hey, we're putting out a map that might change the zoning of your property, would we have to notify in writing with letters? But let's,
Yeah, if you are proposing to change the zoning, you would have.
but I mean, even in an open, just like a public comment meeting,
Well, people can mark up a map and say, I would like to see this changed or whatever. And that's informational and that's something that you can use.
okay.
Then you could, you know, there may be some people that have zoning on their property that they don't want anymore. That's rare, but it could be the case.
I'm suggesting more that, not that we approach it with the idea of changing anybody's zoning that is already set, but just to see where there are tracts of pretty much open land, what people think, what kind of thing people think should happen there. And I mean, it might end up with us having to write a new zone that would include different uses than, maybe even more uses than what are currently allowed there. Anyway, I'm just saying, I mean, useful information.
And one of the things that can happen is you have an area that's planned for low density and, you know, it's not a taking if you say we would like to see more units on this property. Because it's not, you can't enforce that, but you can have a broader range of densities, that sort of thing. Yeah, certainly.
so Kevin, this public meeting comes before the town council meeting. So I remember the flow chart, the town council.
Right.
meeting said, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it comes to the board or in conjunction.
And what-
For a public meeting, are you talking?
So. when
So the
we get
public hearing
plan-
is actually held, you hold a public hearing,
Correct.
and that can count as a town meeting.
Oh,
Public hearing for changes to the zone, for the changes to the general plan.
But my understanding was that there was another open house after we got the survey results.
Necessarily,
Not
and we're
necessarily.
running out of time,
Mhm.
so.
So that public meeting is really a public hearing.
what's our deadline?
Well, I started working last May, essentially May or June, so coming up on a year, and there's some flexibility there, but it's not open ended.
No, I'd like to see.
Because I'm getting other communities lined up.
Yeah. And we have 6 topics.
Yes, and I think you mentioned adding like water. That's one.
Yeah, so that would be 7. So we have an intro and 2 topics here. So in February.
I'll be getting you at least 1 or 2 more.
2 more.
And then, yeah.
And what are the remaining ones?
There is transportation and circulation is required element. And land use is required elements. So then you also have an economic development element. And you have a
Housing.
housing element, which you have. And I believe there's some other facilities,
Yeah.
services and facilities on. I can't remember the other. ones.
Ah,
Environment, transportation, environment. health.
Oh, yeah, element, environment, that was the one.
Yeah, environment.
Yeah.
And then we had land use and we got public services. One more, there were 2 at that table, and then division.
Okay,
All right, so our goal is no later than June. All right, so that's 5 months. So we got to complete at least 2 of these a
so
month, so to have.
if
a
you-
public hearing
hold
in
on.
May.
Can I clarify? You're saying no later than June to have it complete, correct? Through city council.
Correct.
You
We
complete with you,
complete,
and then, yeah.
ready for public
And then one
hearing.
more month for the hearing for the, or not for the public hearing for the meeting. with the county council. So you have through June.
Which July.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just want to be clear on what the,
Yeah.
what the.
I think that's very, 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 very doable now that we got the
Yeah.
survey done, because we can look at the vision statement and then scan the survey for the parts. That do that, you know, and that's after we do our global review of the
Right.
survey and reading all the comments and more. I think the most hard copies that would be nice. So, and, if you get those done sooner rather than later, just send them to me and I'll just stick them in the February work folder as I get them.
So these are new elements that you're going to.
There are existing elements with one addition. Water.
Okay, but the ones that are on SharePoint and that you've made comments on, you're not talking about changing those or.
I'll be
Okay.
sending, I'm sending them as individual documents for each one. So that it's very
We have to
easy
get
to
feedback.
work on once we do.
Great.
And as far as getting an updated map for a zoning map, our town engineer, Rod Mills, will do that for us. So it's not nothing that you guys need to worry about or do. It's just, we need to let him know and he'll do it for us.
Not that you don't have enough to do already, Kristen. Or Shiloh, I don't know which one to address this to. I would really like, once we get an updated zoning map, to have a big copy that
We-
I could have at every planning and zoning meeting.
Yeah, and we can have that, and we just need to let the town engineer know, and we can get him on it. I can get him on it.
Okay, because I don't know, is that something I do, because usually I go through.
Yeah, yeah. I'm chatting with the mayor right now about this issue and, we originally were having Sunrise Engineering do it and that's been dropped. But now we are having Rod Mills. We can prepare us one and get it updated.
Great. Because I mean, we had a comment at our last meeting, about how that would be so informative, and it's almost like the bigger, the better.
Yeah.
I think maps in general, they all need to kind of,
Yeah, even a couple.
Yeah, and once he gives me an updated one, and we get that, we'll also have a digital one, where I can always have it up here too. Which will be great, so once he gives us that updated map that we have, that we used to, do you remember when we used to have it up in the town hall, that old one?
Yeah.
We'll have that up in the town hall, we'd have it, Shiloh will have it up in her development area when we move over there. And so on and so forth, and then we'll have it, always have a digital one where you can say, Crystal, pull up the map, and it can be up on the projector.
I'd still
So we'll
like to
have that
something
big one.
Yeah, why are we spending money on a big, nice, huge town zoning map before we get finished with the general plan?
Well,
Would be great to have an updated digital copy, but I
Yeah.
think we should wait for the hard paper copy until after the general plan has been adopted. Just in case there's changes
yeah,
that need to be represented on that map, and then we have to have it made all over again.
yeah, that's kind of why we've been waiting, that's why
Yeah,
that had.
digital would be good.
Well, this is why we have been waiting on doing a map, because things have changed and waiting for a general plan, and usually after a general plan is when a town updates their maps. Am I right, Kevin? Yeah,
yeah.
so we just should,
But when we have specific discussions on specific areas, this is not the first time that request. has
Yeah.
come up.
we can
This
pull
is
up the
hard-
old map
this
and
is
do it
hard to
digital.
see.
You could just print out an 11 by 17 where you're not spending a lot of money. You
Yeah.
just-
Yeah.
If
We
you
can
want a
do it-
physical map,
A handout.
yeah, just
Yeah,
make it an
yeah.
11 by 17 that's foldable and or you can't use an 8 by.
I'd like to have some.
That's the largest and the least expensive
Before.
to print.
So we,
That's another half.
so
6 meetings.
All right, anything else for me?
No, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I'm off to New Harmony, so.
Oh, All
Thanks,
right,
Kevin.
Thank you.
all right. Alrighty, so. Yes. 6:35.
And Darlene, from that meeting last week, I put in my notes for next week to print out 11 by 17 to have a couple
I
of
think
the
it's a
zones.
valid request.
I have, and flood maps, the ones that are always at my desk, I'm just gonna bring a few. But at the same time, when I understand what I should and should not share, based off what Cameron just said
Mhm.
about zone change and things like that. So maybe a few things, but not, less is more.
I'm just talking about like the public, and you know, it's not perfect.
I can go into the,
Yes.
I can go into that and just do a boundary thing
Yeah,
and print it out.
yeah, Yeah.
It's easy.
it's, you can Google it,
Mhm.
you know, so I don't think.
Not really done that, you know, there's a lot of things like that, because.
Our zoning map, did you say,
Yeah, I'm sorry,
it's not there, it's been taken off.
oh, I found it on the internet.
Yeah, there, it's not, like you go to the town's website, it's not there.
It's not on the town website, but it's on the web.
It is on the web, correct?
Yeah.
And the county,
I think it's in the public, Utah.
But you're saying it's not accurate?
Yeah, but who knows which one it is, cause you're just pulling it from like
Oh,
a public notice.
that's right, and it's not
from the-
accurate.
So who knows which one it is?
It's, and none of the ones I've seen aren't.
Currently, nothing right now is accurate because we've had so many zone changes and no one has an accurate map. Except for
I know what-
probably the clerk's head.
Alrighty, so we have two things, and unfortunately, Larry, you're not here. All right, one of the things was, his neighborhood commercial and, version that Lee Ballard has proposed, and, those are in our folders, if you have not printed them out. And Kent, did you get that printed out, those two? From SharePoint? So we,
Share.
yes.
what are you looking at?
The two versions of the neighborhood commercial. And, but unfortunately Larry's not here to give his input. Where are we? Where did we go? Over there. All right. Let me do something real quick. I don't know where they went. They were in the right. Oh, so yeah.
It's from Riker.
Yes, it's in Riker. Thank you. Okay, if you look at live work or neighborhood commercial, let's talk about that first and then we'll do commercial habitation. So neighborhood commercial, there's only, what Riker's put in there. And, I know that I have commented on it and I sent those comments to Riker and he's made the changes. We need to decide, do we, as a commission, want a separate chapter for this, or do we want it embedded in the commercial? I personally would like to see it in a separate chapter.
I would like a separate chapter. I think that, the neighborhood commercial should look different than the regular commercial, and therefore the standards should all be a little bit different, and, I think it's just going to add confusion to try and figure out which things are the same and which things are gonna be different, and I just think it would be better to have a different chapter like we have for all other, so.
And as you go through Riker's Word documents, we are able to comment, and he still has, some questions there.
Right.
The impetus for this was the Hall property zone change, and that has been addressed through a development agreement. And so we have a little breathing room here to digest the survey and because there are some comments and questions relevant to this kind of topic. And then to add our comments to this and then send it back to Riker. How does that sound to?
Good to me.
He has it as a separate chapter right here. And it's pretty brief. His chart is a little wonky. I don't know why. Let's see if I can move that over. I'll have to let him know his chart isn't centered.
Looks good to me.
You can see the whole graph. Oh, yeah. I wonder if it's because I have the comments.
No, I have comments on, it's fine with me.
It's just my computer. Okay, great. Okay, and I think it's the little chart under 4614 physical restrictions. Okay, so it's there and everybody can see it. I can see it on the PDF if I need to. We'll do this. No. All right. So I would like us to get our comments on this. I don't feel a sense of urgency as much with this. I don't know what other people's thoughts are. I think, I don't want to let it lag, but I think we could take a month or two. I don't think this is a hot burner item. I don't think this needs to go to public hearing next month. Other comments? Agree, disagree?
I would like to make sure that this is done right, so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we should kind of take our time.
Because this could be a really good thing.
Yes.
I think it could be a really good thing. I think it could fit a lot of what residents have expressed.
I hope you all have better luck than I did with this almost exact same ordinance.
Yes, something similar.
Yep.
I wrote.
For that same
years
area
ago
of town.
that failed.
Yeah, okay. What are
It's very similar to this.
Okay,
I just
so, but go ahead. Ken.
kind of get feelings from both sides of it here, but I'd like Cameron's
Correct.
just general observation feeling about neighborhood commercial. As you see it, as you don't.
So, I think this is a great thing. I would propose a few changes to it.
Can you make those in comments?
I can make those in the comments, so I think one of two things either has to happen. Either you need to make pretty significant changes to this, or you need to make pretty significant changes to the commercial zone, because like these are matching, this is matching up really close to the commercial zone.
Right, yeah.
Like, there's not a lot of difference in here. In fact, the height is actually higher in this one, commercial zone.
Yeah.
That's one of the first things I noticed.
Yeah.
Which is fine, because residential height is 25 feet, so I'm not saying that that's bad or good, but you're putting it between commercial and residential. You are allowing higher heights, but so either we need to make changes to this, like I have proposed, with making this more of a mixed use type of zone, or we just need to get rid of it, because if this is gonna mirror the commercial zone,
Right, that's the point.
I see. The commission is pretty much in agreement on that.
so.
So lots of comments. Let's get creative here, okay?
Yes, let's do that.
It's been something that's been asked for and asked for and asked for, so if we can. There should be other things. There they are, personal convenience stores. All right. So if we could get before our next work meeting, some robust comments on here. So that we can even respond to one another, and if you have suggested changes even. we can put it in our color, so we know who we. Does that make sense?
If you just click the, if you just make sure, if you just make sure, if you go to the review tab
Yeah,
and you hit track changes
yeah,
and you turn on
track changes.
for everyone, this will show any change made by any person. And you won't have to change your color.
So
It will say which person made each.
It will, and it
Okay.
will, if you delete something, it
we'll
will,
show you.
it'll do a strikeout.
Yep.
And it'll be in red. If you add something, it'll automatically be in red.
I
You'll
used-
have your name
I
attached.
used to use this for my students, so I could catch, plagiarism. They worked like a charm. That's a good idea. Let's do that. All right, but this is our copy. Riker hasn't seen it. When we're through with it, I can download it and send it to Crystal and she will send it to him.
After we get all our comments. in.
Correct.
Okay, great,
Okay,
great.
all right. And then let us go to commercial habitation. 10:60.
Live work, you mean?
Live work. That is in the same folder. And Larry's version, I'll try to, I apologize, Larry, if I don't do this well, but my understanding is he does not want this to be a conditional use, he just wants it to be use. And there's a few other things in there, like if it's just one unit, then you do not need, supplemental parking. Right? And there can be more than one live work unit at a business. That is how I read this.
This worries me in that I think that I've not read carefully the latest version, but it feels like it would be pretty easy for somebody to just build a big apartment complex, and that would not fulfill the purpose of live work, which I think is to incubate small business and to provide an affordable way for people to.
It does say the residents are associated with the business. But it is very different than our current one, and I need to understand the why behind our current one. For example, in our current ordinance, it is a conditional use, and, correct me if I'm wrong in my interpretation, but you cannot charge whoever lives in
Right.
rent is like
Right.
part of their employment agreement. And this doesn't do that.
And I think that's something we need to lose, because certainly we need to allow people to, encourage people to add living quarters if it's going to make startups easier. And why should they be? I mean, at the time, nobody wanted long-term rentals. It's an old, Larry Emmett wrote that, and it was many years ago. And
Really?
yeah, and he and I actually wrote it, but he, but the town was kind of against any kind of rentals. And so they didn't want that to turn into what I was saying, really good, but that would have been only one unit, so it really wouldn't have been a big problem. But the other thing about it was that at the time, the town had was figuring out how to regulate youth homes. Because we had, I don't know, 4 or 5 applicants to come in and build big youth homes in Virgin. In addition to the ones that we have, and so people wanted to see what we could do to regulate it. And the answer to that question was to, for complicated reasons, to keep all residential use out of commercial zones. And so that's why this was a special exception to that rule, and now, of course,
Now you
the
have homes.
congregate living facility ordinance is gone, and the and now the single family dwellings are even allowed in every commercial zone, I think, so it's a whole different situation. But I think the basics are there that can be amended, which is what my draft does.
So I was hoping, when I learned that Larry would be here, I really would like him here, just to give voice to his reasoning. So I will not be putting this forward, but if we would like to take this opportunity to go over what you have, but I think Cameron, did you have a comment before I move on to research?
So he called me about this ordinance and, he's been waiting a long time.
Well, that is not the following, I mean, that's because he didn't move it to the proper channels quickly enough. In fact, I actually alerted him, because I don't know if I alerted him, but he hadn't submitted it to Rebecca for review, before coming back to us and then going to public hearing.
So if I recall, he came and brought us before town council, is that correct? That he wanted to do limited commercial habitation.
I'm not aware of that.
I'm pretty sure that he brought this before town council.
Well, he did not inform the commission.
And
This is what I'd
And the
like to
town
hear.
council, if I remember right, you tell me if I'm wrong. They talked about it and they said, we will move this forward through Riker to planning and zoning.
No. He wrote this himself
Right.
and then, was instructed that he needed to send it through Riker.
My understanding was town council's already seen it.
Not formally.
No, town council hasn't formally seen this, no. He was instructed to work on it and draft something up for them to see. The town council has not seen this yet. He needs to still submit this to them. They have not seen this.
So what did he submit when he came to the town council? and asked?
Nothing.
And then what did the town council do?
Just told him to work on it, to draft an ordinance and work on it. When he. It was
Told
just,
him to draft
it
an
was
ordinance?
just an idea at that point,
Yeah.
that's all it was. There was nothing more than just an idea of what he wanted. And at that point, we were just getting Riker, so then I said, submit your stuff to Riker and start drafting.
Do you remember what that was?
I'd have to go through the minutes and look. But,
So if it's taking a while.
but Larry did have a little bit of miscommunication in. Emailing Larry last month. He also thought the same thing as Lee thought with Kevin. He thought. He was sending notes in SharePoint and he thought Riker was getting notes in SharePoint. And I said. No, Riker doesn't have access to SharePoint. You have to send me an email.
Yes.
And I have that in an email that Larry and I were going back and forth. Actually, I believe I was in Hawaii and I was going back and forth and I said, you need to send me an email. I need to send this to him. You have to send it. He does not have access to
And
SharePoint.
then when
You guys are the only ones that have access to SharePoint. So it was a misunderstanding. I said, you need to send me what you want,
Mhm.
then I will send it to Riker, and I think there was just a miscommunication on
And
understanding.
then
how
I
it
taught
was.
that as I was preparing for the agenda,
Yeah,
and I said, hey, have you heard back from Riker?
yeah,
And then that's when he.
yeah, so
contacted
that was
Crystal
where,
and they worked that out.
and that was that miscommunication went wrong with Larry and that SharePoint thing, 'cause he was making his comments and he was like, I haven't heard back from Riker, and I was like, you haven't sent me anything, and he goes, well, didn't you get my comments? And I was like, you haven't sent me anything, and he goes, well, they're in the SharePoint, and I was like. Yeah,
I didn't understand that either. I thought I
Yeah.
was talking to
Yeah.
everybody.
no, no, SharePoint's only you guys,
It's a
always
safe
only
space
you,
for
it is a
us.
safe space for you and you guys
Exactly.
only, that is it,
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
An internal.
If you guys want SharePoint, if it like, that they cannot have access to it. At all.
Okay.
So. Communication with Kevin, communication with Riker, you've got to send it to me. If they wanna see a document, don't send it a link to it, you've got to send me the document so that I can forward it.
Hey,
And if you have any questions, contact me.
Yeah.
So,
And Darlene and I chat all the time, even on the weekends and stuff, we chat all the time, so it's good.
so, Lee, you wanna give us a summary of yours? So that as we go through these two, because my intent is to have these both perhaps, I don't know if we want to merge, I don't know if we want to just put both up for public hearing, so we need to come to that decision, based on, feedback from Riker and all that, okay? So there's some, discussion already starting there between, Lee and Riker. As you can see when you look at the Word doc here. So my goal is for our next work meeting is to make sure everybody's made their comments. I have it within the next 2 weeks,
yeah,
so that I can then download these 2 Word docs and send them to Crystal, to send them to Riker, so we can, move this along.
I can't figure out how to show the comments.
Are you in the Word doc or the PDF?
In the Word doc.
So if you click on the little comment thing, mine just came up. View. I don't have it.
You have to enable editing.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Or reviewing, you can add.
Yeah, mine won't allow me, it's been protected.
Yeah,
Someone protected this document.
yeah, so we can, you can review and add comments.
What? So. I was gonna, oh, wait a minute.
They're there.
Oh,
It's
no.
not as nice as the other document, which allows editing. I'm gonna stretch my legs.
Yeah.
Get some water.
There you be.
Some water.
No. That's sort of it.
If you want.
Very much.
Okay, edit, not.
Protected.
Because you probably uploaded it.
Oh, I did. I have.
What?
Official.
You just click on the little.
Bubbles.
If you were able to edit it, you'd be able to see the comments easier,
Okay.
like in the other document.
Okay.
But because it's protected,
So then that basically said.
it won't let you.
That is weird, because I did not protect it.
All I can tell you is it's protected, it won't allow me to open it up.
So wait a minute.
I can.
Wait. Now try.
Open it up and read only.
Sometimes that happens to me, and I just, no, I'm
Sorry, I can't move the stock.
Really?
Open review on
I
that.
would like to see what that official one line is.
So I could open it, but you
What?
can't.
No, we can only open it in
During our-
review.
our last 40
Oh,
hours.
Okay, so let me do this.
It was town council
Which is
meeting.
fine.
Was in town,
Can you see the comments?
Yeah, if I do what you did, I can find the comment.
2023,
When she opens it, it's like the first
Last year,
document.
August 20th.
24.
Item number 7.
Yeah, permission.
I don't know why.
Right here.
I'm gonna share.
This
I just-
commission,
it's
you
just the way I want to share.
rather than create a new use for commercial zone.
I didn't do anything special. What are your,
Special
what are the?
I got it.
Key points
I have
of
it.
your ordinance?
Okay, for one,
I'll go by the.
Oh, I got it right there.
Oh, you do.
I got it.
for one thing, it would only be one quarters per business.
What?
And be attached,
One, what?
one living quarters
Oh.
per business. And
Attached.
it's attached. And I don't, I mean, if 2 stories are allowed in the zone, I don't know. If it- I don't know what zone it is in, I guess. Then it would either be the living quarters upstairs or beside it or behind it or something. It must be, let's see.
So one comment I have is I noticed under eligibility, it says it has to be in the commercial zone. But doesn't the Sign River Resort have one of these? I think it does. That is Highway Resort.
No, it says it's not commercial zone, it's commercial zones, so including.
Oh,
quarters.
see how
Okay,
commercial-
so it's Commercial,
Yeah, commercial isn't capitalized.
right.
Okay. Go ahead.
Then. So the density of the zone, now, Riker asked this question, and I don't even understand this question. But because it says, businesses which in the discretion of the planning and zoning commission are likely to create excessive dust, odor, smoke, noise, or vibration are not eligible for a live work unit permit. Now, I think that a lot of that was taken out of what Larry was proposing. But then Riker said,
What is the intent?
what was that? Yeah. What is the intent of this requirement?
Safety.
No, the intent of that requirement is to keep people from complaining.
Yeah, it's, yeah, exactly.
See people, but
Keep people from complaining. They don't want
No,
someone to,
It's the
Well,
business
it's also
doing
safe.
that.
It's also.
It's the
safety.
business. Which,
they don't want someone building a residence over the top of an industry plant. And
Exactly,
then complaining to the town every other week that it's loud.
That it's,
yes,
that they
well,
see
but
smoke.
that would be someone who worked there, who lived there.
yeah.
Right,
that
but
doesn't
still.
mean-
That's the
I
purpose
think
of
there's,
that.
I'm gonna go with safety.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Um,
All right,
now,
and then the big difference is. Larry's. Basically with those few changes, I believe I mentioned all his keywords. Takes it out of being a conditional use and making it a permitted use.
Yes.
And this one,
I have some, this one would be a. How do we say? Would be conditional. Because. There's no way to, especially this kind, where you're trying to mix 2 different kinds of residents and a business. There are all sorts of things that can come up. And I think that it would, that maybe conditional,
Can you give an example?
like, say, somebody worked for a business and their family moved into the upstairs. And then the business, decided that it needed to deal with some hazardous materials or something like that. And change their direction or anyways, anything that would make it unsafe for somebody to be in the same building with it, to be nearby.
That situation wouldn't make something a conditional use.
Well, the reason that the idea is that the person who's coming in for the permit would say, well, this is the business. And my family's moving in upstairs. And once we heard what the business was, then we could imagine whether there might be some problem that could arise and we could make a condition about it.
So is it more of, conditions upon your application that you have to need to do this?
I don't understand. I really think that because of the way our ordinance is set up right now, we're lacking, the language we need to enforce a lot of it. So now every time one of our chapters gets dealt with, then like lighting, right? I don't know about signs, but they get sent to get the language added so that they can be enforced, right? We don't have that for everything.
Yeah.
You would have to have that for every potential use that you put in that's permitted. And we don't have that. And I think I'm not against making a lot of uses permitted. But first, we need to have those standards. And then we need to have the ability to enforce them. So that's my feeling about it.
And that's development.
I'm still not seeing permitted, yeah, they have to come in and get a permit. But I'm not seeing the reason why it needs to be a conditional use permit where it has to be announced to the public. And the public gets to come and make comment, because a conditional use permit is to gather information from the public about concerns that there's some problems that it's gonna cause to the community.
Okay, now I also should confess that I think our conditional use chapter is incredibly burdensome. And I would like to propose that we have a low impact conditional use permit that would not require a public hearing, that would not require going to the DRC, but that would require that they had this permit and that they had conditions listed on it, which were the standards that are written in the ordinance.
And that's
or
what this would be.
So,
that's what this would be.
yeah, and I think that's what Riker had proposed with permitted with conditions.
Yeah.
It's funny because I've
No,
been reading about. I've been reading like what the ULCT thinks about dealing with conditional use permits, and I know that it's kind of standard all over Utah that there are 3 kinds of uses, you know, permitted, conditional, and prohibited. But it's kind of mind bending that a permitted use does not require a permit. It just, I mean, the whole thing doesn't make sense. Also, it makes no sense that people look at a conditional use as one that you may or may not be able to get, but they are permitted uses, but they have conditions on them. So essentially, permitted with conditions is a conditional use permit. You can't deny one. If you put something in a zone as a permit, as a conditional use, that means you think it goes there. And unless there's some really, you know, drastic, substantial conflict with surroundings or land or something like that, then you have to approve it. You just,
right, but see, you can tell me if I'm just way off base, but when I look at a conditional use permit, what I look at and say, this is a use that we think that belongs in this zone. And it will work in nearly every area of this zone, but it does have an impact that would be substantially different from property to property. And so And the impact is not on the owner, and it's not on the tenants of that property, it's on the community at large. And so they will apply for that conditional use, means 99.9% of the time that's granted. But when they come in and they say, here's my property, here's my proposal, you look at that specific property based on your ordinances and your standards that you have outlined. You say, okay, here's some additional regulations that we think that you personally, because of your property, we need to add to this for the protection of the community. Right?
I mean, everything, except I also think it could be for the applicant's protection. And for the town's legal protection. So not just for neighbors or the community.
And that's permitted with conditions.
No, that's a conditional use permit.
Conditional use permit.
For example, like when the gas station that, I don't know, which is just sitting there now. When that thing, what came in, it was a conditional use permit, and when it came before planning and zoning, then I want to say we, besides the conditions already outlined in the zone that were requirements that they meet, I think we added 16 additional requirements on top of all those conditions, so we added 16 more requirements to that. Whereas I don't foresee this housing being such a significant of an impact that it would require additional restrictions dependent upon property location. Now, if you said, well, there's just certain businesses this isn't compatible with, then we would outline those as regulations.
As not, and I totally agree that it could be permitted without any worries if we did have a list of businesses that would be compatible. But we don't have that yet, and I'm not saying we shouldn't work on that, and then we could change it and make it permitted, but we don't have it now. So,
So I guess where I disagree with you is we should create that list with this requirement, because we're not looking at an exhaustive list of 1 million businesses. We're gonna look at the businesses that are outlined in our commercial zones, which is a couple dozen.
Does item 4 do that? Limitations and requirements?
I think that includes most of the standards that we would want to have on everybody. The problem is, I mean, I guess we could just make a list of what would be,
Like I said, it doesn't need to be an exhaustive list. It needs to be focused on our ordinances. This is what we're allowing in this zone. This is what we're allowing in our commercial zones. These are the specific ones. And I'm thinking of all of our ones we have now, and I can't think of any one. Maybe food trucks would be valid. Even that, if they have their own independent housing. I can't think of a single use that we allow, because we don't typically allow extremely high impact uses or industrial uses.
okay, that makes sense. Okay, I think we could do that. So my question now is, when somebody comes in for a permitted to do a permitted use, they get a building permit, they get a business license, and but there's no document that tells them what they have to comply with, right?
Well-
So there's no place, there's no permit, then
Sure, there's a building permit.
building permit, but a building permit goes away once you're built and signed off. So there would be no documentation of what standards are supposed to be followed. And therefore, it would be like impossible to deal with any, serious problems. And it would be, they sell the property to somebody else and they have no idea that they're supposed to, only have this size house, and they start adding on to that, I mean,
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no,
So, you could make it a permit, like a residential hosting permit that's filed with the town, saying, hey, because everyone that's gonna do, okay, I'm looking at this practically and I'm saying, here's what I have this property, I have no buildings on it, and I wanna build a business, but I want to live there, or I want my manager to live there. And so I come into the town, I say, here is my building plans, this is what I want to build. And so the first thing I see is this live work areas need to be defined in the plans, so they need to define them in their building permits. There, they have a defined thing in their plan. I personally think that's enough. Right there, I think that's enough, but if you wanna go further, one step further, and say, okay. They're gonna review the plans at the town office, several people review them, including the lawyer, and everybody reviews them and says, oh yeah, they have a live work here. He's gonna be required to fill out this live work application. This application, he's gonna do it once, it's a whatever processing fee to get that application. He'll need to renew that with his business license every year. There's no additional charge, I would prefer, there's no additional charge for the renewal of live work, because we want to encourage that. So there's no additional charge with the renewal of that, but he does need to renew that every year.
And on that would be
all the list
standard.
of standards. Yes, no, that's exactly what I am envisioning.
so kind of like a merge of the two. But the merge of yours and Mary's.
Yeah. We need to add, I think, a section allowing us to do a CUP light or whatever. Call it just a permit, it doesn't have to be called a conditional review permit, but every single permit, every permission that the town gives to anybody is conditional. Whether it's on specific conditions written by the planning commission, or whether it's on the ordinance, I mean, everything's conditional. So that's what I meant by conditional permit.
Lee, just so you guys have an idea, on our business licenses. For instance, or on our residential hosting or our short-term rental licenses, on the bottom of them, there is conditions. And it's printed out on their licenses, what their
Okay, and
conditions
are they
are.
specific to that business, or are they just ones that the ordinance?
Yeah.
Or,
So if they have a conditional use permit, it says on there. Must obey by their conditional use permit and town ordinances and or. The health department, if it's a food thing or whatever we have as their conditions, so. Yeah, there is conditions, and short-term rentals have conditions based on our ordinances, what it says in there, so. And I put those on their business licenses. And
okay,
it's printed on there, so when we have a permit, just like Cameron was saying, if we have something and it's renewed each time, if they're licensed, their condition would be on there.
and we could just call it a live work permit. And
Right, and it would be, so something like that, so it'd be similar to what you guys are saying, a live work permit that they would renew. That condition would be on that live work permit.
Okay.
So-
And initially, they could pay a fee that's less than what you have to pay to get a conditional use permit. And then after that, no more fees, because you have to pay for your business license every year,
Yeah.
so, yeah,
But you know what I'm saying, though, like.
I do.
So our license on the bottom, it's printed on there, so that might use your guys' mind a little bit on what you guys are trying to accomplish.
So
Okay.
we want it permitted, but as part
The
of,
problem is, at that point, then
Permitted by.
none of this
permit.
happens.
You just put on there, it's a permitted use, and you just put an addendum that says requires a permit.
Okay,
We have a couple, I believe that's with a couple other things on there, like residential hosting, I think is in the permitted, but it says permit required.
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
In parentheses.
I don't know, I
Like
think
that
that's all we
short-term
need.
rental is, you know, they call it a license, but it's actually a permit, you know, their short-term rental permit or their short-term rental license. I mean,
So
whatever. you
how
wanna call it.
do you know, this is my next question, but I like where it's going. Somebody comes in, says they want to do a live work, they need a live work permit. That what
We
happens?
would
They go to-
probably create them an application that they fill out, just
Yeah.
like he was saying, we'd create them an application, we'd have a filing system where we create them an application. Just as like, the same thing as like the business licenses, the short-term rentals, it would fall right under that same thing.
Okay, and they would come to the planning commission? Would the planning commission be the ones who approved it? But because how would you know what?
Well, I think it would be in,
the-
the zone would already be in there, so they would be approved under the zone because they'd have to be in the zone.
Right,
So it would already be approved within that zone, so then it would be an administrative.
okay, so. So you would just, when you put these conditions on the license that you were talking about, where would you get them?
They would be in the ordinance,
They'd have to be
they'd
written.
already be written out conditions for everybody, so everybody has to obey by those conditions.
Okay, so that is the thing that I'm worried about, but maybe in this case, we have what we need.
And I'm sure Crystal would show us the document.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that a lot of other uses, we
Yeah.
don't have any standards
Yeah.
for, and there, some of them are listed as permitted, and I worry about that,
Yeah.
but I think that
This
this
is a
could
good
be
first.
okay.
So what I have is, we're working towards, the version where it's permitted, but it requires a live work permit. And on that permit are the listed parameters requirements, right? So. I'll let Larry know. And,
And shall I amend?
you can try amending this in here or create a new one or whatever, and then, he can give us feedback on that. So we can get this hearing on books. All right? Okay, thank you for that robust problem solving discussion. I've got a couple more things I'd like to get through tonight.
Just one more point, I think that before this is published, I would recommend that we send it to the lawyer, because
Yes,
we can't run afoul of labor law.
I mean, that is our, we always do that. Now, we send it to Riker and then it runs by, either Heath or if we need, like with the sign ordinance, we have to run it by the prosecuting attorney.
Yeah, I don't want us to run afoul
No,
of labor
no,
laws.
that's part of our routine. All right, okay, Kent, I think, I'm planning on putting the lighting ordinance up for public hearing. The amendments have been made. My only comment is, I do not see the, prosecuting attorney.
Yeah, so he emailed me,
I'm assuming it's gonna be very similar to the sun.
no,
It's different.
he said, I did not see any language to the effect that a violation of subsection 4 is a class B misdemeanor. So he suggested a class C infraction
Okay,
is what he suggested, so
does he have that language so I could add it?
it would be the same language that was in the,
So that's option A.
yeah,
Class C.
class C, it would be in there, so.
That's the lightest one.
Yep, so nothing could be, you cannot, he said nothing could be under a class B misdemeanor, so it said class C infraction, and everything seems to be civil, in nature.
Okay, so, I have no further comments on this ordinance. I feel it's ready for a public hearing. I don't know if there will be a relight after that public hearing. What are the thoughts of the other commissioners?
I have a couple of things. Number one is he's recorded, so that's done. Check that off. Just get rid of that item. The other item I had was, I wanted to discuss with the commission, one thing that I've come to see that's not there and defined as clearly as it should be, or even if it's there. I talked, with Paul about it. And that refers to something that is becoming increasingly, speedily popular, especially in commercial areas, of these new mounted channel LED lights, where they're along the rim of a roof. They put them onto an aluminum board piece, and they run it along the roofs of homes.
It makes
But
it look like neon, kind of.
yeah,
Okay.
well, not
It's
but they can be flashy.
Yeah. they can be more-
Everybody's seen it. If you drive SR9 in Hurricane or Luberca and you see them. They're small LEDs, they mount them on a strip, and I think that people are doing that now even in residential areas. In fact, I know they're doing it in residential areas even here a bit. But I think it's been more associated with our holiday regulation, which is October 15th to January 15th. I don't have any problem with that. But I do see this accelerating really fast with these LED lights. And if you take a minute and look in Hurricane, as you go through Hurricane, a good example is Dixie Nutrition. As you turn and go over towards 59, across from the old elementary and the museum, Pioneer Museum. They've got one on, I noticed last night. And so I talked with Paul a little bit about it. And as we look at things in other places, they're calling these, they're putting them into the category of string lighting, mounted string lighting. And that's in the ordinance. So Paul is working on that, and I wanted to ask for feelings, because I'd be surprised if none of you noticed this phenomenon.
So
Yeah.
basically what you're talking about is like permanent Christmas lights. Yep. And so because they're permanent, they can be reprogrammed and people use them for other holidays or, yeah, we're having a quinceañera, and so now we're gonna have my daughter's favorite color. And this thing. So
What I thought, Cameron, while you're thinking on that thought, this might relate to it, I was thinking that what really matters on maybe the lumens. Because you technically may not, there's some of them are so small, some of them would be a problem. Lumens are too much there with the LEDs, but some of them are just little teeny lights. And you'd have to really put a whole bunch of them together to get something that's going to be affected by the ordinance as it's written now. Which has to do with, you can go out and put a light on your sidewalk, lights on your sidewalk that have little teeny lights in it. And they don't necessarily have to be shielded, other than maybe from on the top. They don't have to be shielded and worried about even meeting other standards of the ordinance. The lumens are less than 1,000, and so, or whatever they're called. And they just don't affect the night sky. They just don't affect it. They don't impact it whatsoever. And I think some of these might fall into that. So Paul's looking into how to write that, or how our community is writing it.
So are you asking me to hold off on this?
Pardon?
Are you asking me to hold off on this?
No, absolutely
Okay,
not.
so
I just
here's-
wanted some ideas, because we'll have this in a few days.
Okay, because I need to get it to.
By
Sunday.
Sunday, okay. We'll have it by Sunday. I mean, we'll have something
So I'm gonna
by
give
Sunday,
you
but I wonder if it even should be addressed. I'm addressing it. It should be addressed. And I'd like some feedback
I think
or suggestions.
they need to be addressed. I think we also addressed it somewhat. Check, I'll Google it, on our sign ordinance. I know we're gonna have to have some reconciliation between the sign ordinance, which does not allow internal lighting, and this ordinance. I am having an interesting
This-
conversation with.
Our lighting ordinance allows internal lighting.
Yes, it does. I was just reading that section right now.
But the sign ordinance doesn't, so
Doesn't.
we've got to decide which.
It's restricted to lumens and.
Oh, I see.
So we need to, I know that's one area we're gonna have to adjust. And
Yes.
that's a separate conversation. I'm also having an interesting conversation on this topic with Mr. Matzler and this idea of halo lighting. I just need to know more. And so, that might be an area of tweaking this too. But as you know, with the sign ordinance, this is probably not the only public hearing.
Yeah.
3 or 4 different, the sign.
So, yeah, I'd like to have something.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think that unless there's a lot of changes to make, that we should move it along and think as we're going about things we might, little amendments we might want to
Yeah.
make afterwards.
Yeah.
Because that would be easy to do. Once we figure out exactly how it conflicts with the sign ordinance, then we have to decide which one we like better and then do it. But if it's gonna slow down the process, I don't know. It's-
Yeah, I wanted the same thing, if we could amend it in the process, if we,
So if, whether I get it or not.
yeah.
We'll move ahead.
But I think,
But try to get it.
I think I'll have something within 24 hours.
Yeah, okay, that's my deadline. It's not that I want to drag it out, it's just, I have to respect, these.
Cameron has a
Clerks.
comment.
So I just wanted to respond how I would suggest we handle that. This is my suggestion and my suggestion. I think that we just require that the holiday or decorative lights like that, they're just turned off by midnight. I mean, I don't, even during Christmas and holidays, there's not really good reason to leave them on after midnight, in my opinion. But, you know, you could exempt the holidays or something, but I mean, let people turn them on for their parties and whatever they're doing them for, and then just,
Beyond percent.
Yeah.
Can't, I may be misremembering, but I swear I read this thoroughly, but it's been a month or so. Light spillage. Light spillage, that's addressed.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Okay. And I will reread it again, between now and the next,
There've been a lot of hands involved in what we have right now, putting this all together, and a lot of work from a lot of different sources, even from the state, for us particularly. And for our SR9 scenic highway designation. So I think this is just one that seems to be really all of a sudden jumping on the commercial building, even home lighting scene today, because of the advanced popularity of LEDs.
Yeah, and there's such a strong desire in our community to protect our dark skies. I mean, as we clearly see. All right, thank you, Ted, for all your work.
Okay.
We're sitting.
Oh, yeah, I think you've done a really good job on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, the next, I have just 2 more things. I'm gonna skip rules and procedures. I was just putting that down just in case. And I do have one other item that came on. The next item is duplex in commercial, and, we've been working with this idea. We have a proposal. And as our survey says, there is some interest in having duplexes. And we're working on ideas that, Lee and I have batted around some ideas. We'll probably have something ready for us to preview next month. But Lee, do you wanna share the main points and maybe we can get some input from their wisdom here?
Did write something down, if I could find it here. But I mean, I had two thoughts, and one was that we could have an overlay zone. And it would allow for slightly, like duplexes and things like that in whatever zone the overlay was placed on top of. But that is more complicated, and it would be much faster and easier now anyway to do.
By the ordinance for just,
Yeah, to simply add the use to commercial zone and put standards on it. So I had some ideas for standards, but I can't find them.
so,
But I could put it on
yeah,
SharePoint.
yeah. It was like, we're trying to think of how to balance this ordinance, so it doesn't contradict ordinances we currently have, such as one water, hookup, one septic system. And the general standard is per acre. And the limit of 5 total bedrooms between the 2 units.
Yes.
Things like that. So that wouldn't, it would allow it, it wouldn't be too dense, especially without sewer hookups. But it would still allow some use, correct? And then we were batting around the idea of, well, we know we've got this private sewer potential coming up. Should we create an ordinance that accommodates that addition now? And be a little proactive about that, or just deal with this current level. So those are the things we'd love your feedback on. So Lee will get that to me and I will put it in February's work folder. Okay,
Okay.
how does that sound, Karen?
I don't speak.
It's a work meeting.
It's a work meeting.
This is a work
I
meeting.
thought I was able to speak. That's okay. I just wanted to share a couple of things on the history of it, but you know.
They got the backstory, actually Darlene got the backstory of it from the town council's meeting about your
Yes, I
backstory. So she did get this backstory of it. So she is up to date.
I watched all of it.
Yep.
Yeah,
She is up to date on the backstory, so,
Background on it.
I'm sorry.
yeah,
No,
no,
we're good.
she is up to date on everything. She did get all up to date on everything, so that's why they're actively working on this.
Yes, and we've been batting our heads like, because so many people think it's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah,
But we're just working out, how can we do this and not compromise any of our current ordinances?
Right.
And so I think we're headed down the right path.
I think what Lee said earlier is really good, and that when we set this up, when I met with the mayor and Gene Girardi, he basically said the concern was that it's a long-term rental, and we want to make sure it's not a short-term rental.
Correct.
Here, it was that simple, and he came out of the office, Gene Girardi, after meeting with the mayor on that very first day, and he said, Tom, we just have to have some condition on your property in perpetuity, on your lease even, you know, that it is, that it has to be long-term rental. 6 months to a year, and that's the kind of document you're talking about, a follow-up
Yes,
document.
And that was one of the.
And that's exactly, it was that simple, he
So
said,
we
he said,
include that language as
he said
well.
he could do that in a couple minutes, just a couple lines on there, and we're good to go. I'm not,
Right in the ordinance.
pardon me?
We can put it right in the ordinance.
And it also opens the door for affordable housing
Correct.
for other people, so that's, I'm sorry to, but
No worries.
that's the background.
We're almost done. I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the second ordinance that will be up for public hearing.
I have a question if I could.
Sure.
So you guys talked about this, I'd be interested in. If simply as this is written here, if you just added the word duplex to here as a permitted use, what ordinances would this be violating? If we did that.
We were thinking, we're concerned about water and, septic. And we have, size requirements. And we were worried about, as Larry was talking about for last meeting, last work meeting, you know, density. And so that's the purpose of this. Of this.
Okay, because you said you were worried that this would violate other laws or other rules.
Yes,
I'm
and
confused at what rules that this would violate by simply adding it.
we have a law that says there's, per acre.
Where?
I think it's past the size ordinance.
But for what?
The whole town, all zones.
This says what? Where is it listed? Where's that ordinance? Because I missed it, so I don't know,
You missed that?
I'm unfamiliar with this ordinance.
I'll get it for you. Okay,
What, I mean, is it in like chapter 2, chapter 8, like, where is it?
this, I'll check with the mayor, she's the one who updates the code, and she will tell me where it is. Okay, there was a public hearing on it, there was letters, and the whole spiel.
Finally, letter, but,
No, there were letters from the public.
Oh,
and
gotcha.
Public testimony, went through the whole.
and the rules, what does the rule state?
So there's a size limit. There's a septic, one septic per acre, one water hookup.
Yeah, share it with you thought or not, is this inappropriate?
Yeah, no, it's, yeah, they have their copies and they'll look at it, but,
Okay.
We have problems.
Cameron, I'll email that. I'll email that ordinance right over to you.
have it
right now.
That's all.
Okay.
The one that she's talking about, I'll email it right over to you.
You'll email that ordinance,
Yeah, the one that she's talking about.
you know what chapter it's in?
I'm looking it up.
So, I think we're on to a solution.
Besides that, was there any other laws that this would violate?
That's the main one we were concerned about, and then there's just a general concern, as you heard in our
Gotcha, about them.
density.
Uh,
I mean, commissioners have expressed that concern. A general survey has expressed that concern, but there is an interest in the data.
Yes.
Nothing but the duplex, but no duplex, you know. So,
So I just imagine that, you know, there would be stated height limit. I don't know oh, it's going in commercial, right? So I mean, I did write some language about it, but I didn't bring it apparently.
34.
that's, you know, that's just to get more ideas.
32 and
Okay,
34?
commissioners,
Yeah.
what is it?
32 and 34.
Oh, yeah.
And what my list of ideas was to you, if you want,
Sure.
zoning.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I'll put it in the folder. So, and then, Lee is putting forth a very simple ordinance on amending, locations in chapter 32. That you put there as well.
I just sent it to you in your email. It's 2024-12 is the ordinance.
Thank you.
And in our folder, it's under work meeting, the 1-9 draft ordinance. And can you explain this one?
What are we talking about?
The second one is going up for the hearing on location.
Oh. Oh, yeah, I mean, it's untying the hands of the planning authority or the planning commission and council,
Thank you, Mr. Cross.
as far as reasons go. So because our ordinance lays out certain locations, and the original intent was to encourage the growth of a certain zone or whatever, but then the location sections kept changing and now they just don't really make any kind of useful division between different areas of town. And so, that would just remove them, and then when somebody asks you for a rezone, you wouldn't have to say, oh, the ordinance tells us we ought to pass this, and instead you could use your full discretion.
So this one will also be, before public hearing, and then we discuss it next month at our work meeting again, and then we vote on it at the next meeting, March, would be March. You know, especially since we don't have Larry here.
Right.
So I want to always make sure we have that space. Right? I'm done. Does anyone else have anything?
Just one clarifying thing, because
Sure.
I have just looked it up, so. This is the one you're referring, this is the law that you're referring to, right? It says the following standards apply to parcels of 1 acre or more. A dwelling in rural residential zone shall not exceed 4,800 square feet of living area, or 15% of the parcel, whichever is greater. B, the parcel shall be permitted a single septic tank with the maximum capacity of 2,000 gallons. C, a parcel shall be permitted no more than a single culinary water connection.
Correct.
No culinary water connection shall be more than 3/4 inch. That's the law you're referring to, right?
And it was for all zones. Because we have allowed residents in all zones. It's my understanding. But if these are residences, I think that's a fair thing.
That same language is not in the commercials.
No, it's in this. Well,
We can talk about it another
we
time.
can talk about it all the time, yeah, we'll figure that out, but I think it's a good standard, Misty put forth the idea of the 5 bedrooms, I can share that section of that town work meeting with everybody. Through email update, cause I thought it was pretty informative.
Oh, the council
Work meeting. Where this first came up. It's complicated on this particular one because there's already a residence on less than an acre. So, but you are maybe a way to.
Well, that specifically says that those regulations only apply to rules to, says specifically 1 acre or more.
Well, if our main goal is density, that might be a good line, a good, standard to use. I think.
Right, I'm not denying the idea that it's a good standard to use. I was just trying to get to the laws that would prohibit us from doing this.
I didn't say there were laws that would prohibit us from doing. I would like to avoid.
Okay,
I would like, what I meant to say,
Oh.
sorry, that's what you heard, was I want to make sure we're not contradicting ourselves all over the place.
well, no, I agree, we shouldn't be contradicting ourselves. However, we distinctly treat different zones differently, and we do that for a reason.
But a home is a home is a home, so I think it's, and in this particular case, this is totally surrounded by residential. And we're trying to plan, not just for one person, but for a pattern moving forward that would allow some affordability. Balanced with concerns about density, balanced with concerns about adding more short-term rentals. And just trying to see how we can make it a win.
No, I completely understand that viewpoint. I guess I'm just gonna need, I'm gonna need more specific, like, reasoning, because you said there are laws that prohibit us from doing this, and I even asked you, I said, what are the laws? What are the laws? And then you listed, you gave me this law that I
I
then,
don't recall using the word prohibited, but I may have, and I apologize.
that
if I
would
did.
stop us from doing this. And I asked you, what is the law that would stop us from doing this?
I don't think I said that. That's not what I meant.
Okay, well, maybe that's not what you meant, but I know that
So
I
I,
asked.
but I clarified it.
I know that I asked you though, and so I just need clarification sooner so that I don't get frustrated. Because when I ask, when I say, what is the law that would prohibit us from doing this?
That
And
would-
you say,
I said.
and you said, we passed this thing a long time ago that said for all zones, and then we look it up, and it's not for all zones. It's only in the residential, it's only in the rural residential. Now I'm getting frustrated because we're not communicating on the same page. Now, if we're just talking policy,
Right, we can continue this
Then we should
conversation
policy.
after.
which I'm very happy to talk about, no, I think this needs to be on the record. I'm very happy to talk policy, and we can have policy.
I'm willing
difference.
to take a motion to close this meeting.
That we close the planning and zoning working.
Comment? I think we can make this all be out of here by 8 o'clock or earlier, hopefully in 60 seconds. But I understand that there are a few concerns here of stuff that I don't even comprehend, and know, what the difference between the two is. I recommend that we take, this outside the meeting and find a way to discuss the concerns when, we can be a little less emotional and.
And I'm not gonna be combative, this is not,
Yeah,
that's not
well,
my
and I
style.
don't think anybody wants to be. I think people have strong, I feel that both of you have really strong reasons to feel the way you feel, and I think that, we can solve these, and they're important. And I value both of your skills, abilities, and wisdom as to why you're asking questions and arguing this point. And I think you could work this out.
Oh, definitely. But. Think about it. And come back to it. Do I have a second?
I second.
I just close that.
Aye.
No.
Karen?